Ethan Walker had always believed fear was something you outgrew, like childish nightmares or the stories adults used to warn their kids into behaving. But that belief shattered the moment he stepped out of the elevator on the 4th floor of the old Hawthorne Hotel. The dim corridor stretched unnaturally long, swallowing the weak ceiling lights one by one, until the far end dissolved into pitch-black nothingness. A sticky draft brushed through the hallway like cold fingertips dragging across his spine. It felt wrong in a way that wasn't just old building decay, but something deeper, older, and waiting. He adjusted his backpack and forced himself forward. He was exhausted after the 9-hour drive from Ohio, and all he wanted was a shower and a bed before the conference in the morning. The receptionist downstairs had given him a room key and a strangely long stare before muttering, "4th floor. Room 404. If you need anything, let us know." Her tone carried something between warning and resignation, but fatigue drowned any suspicion. Ethan didn't realize then that the 4th floor should have been his first clue. Most hotels didn't even label a room 404 superstition. Unlucky numbers, stories of people disappearing, but Hawthorne Hotel still kept one. Almost like they didn't want to disturb whatever lived behind that door. As he walked, the carpet beneath his feet felt unusually soft. Too soft. His steps didn't echo but sank, absorbed by the worn fabric like the floor itself was swallowing the sound. The buzzing lights flickered, struggling as though something unseen was feeding on their electricity. His phone dropped from 52% battery to 18% in seconds. At the first door, room 401, Ethan passed without issue. Room 402. The air grew colder. Room 403. The smell of something metallic drifted from underneath, like old iron or dried blood. Then he stopped in front of 404. The brass numbers were crooked, as if someone had torn them off violently and then nailed them back on again. The door itself had a strange texture, not like wood, but more like something that had swelled and warped over time. He touched it gently. It pulsed, as if something on the other side took a slow, heavy breath. Ethan jerked his hand back. A rational part of his mind whispered that he was simply overtired, that old buildings settled, that materials expanded, that stress made senses overreact. But the primal part of the human brain, the animal instinct buried in all people, screamed at him to run. He slid the keycard into the lock. The light blinked red. He tried again. Red. Again. Green. The door clicked open with a long, dragging sound, as though it hadn't moved in decades. A gust of icy air rushed out, so cold and so heavy that it carried the scent of damp concrete and something rotten hidden far beneath the surface. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the hallway lights behind him flickered violently, then stabilized, as if the building exhaled in relief now that he had entered. Ethan stepped inside. Room 404 wasn't like the other rooms he glimpsed while walking past. It was disproportionately long, stretching farther than any hotel room should. Shadows clung to into the corners like wet ink. A single window at the far end rattled with a wind that shouldn't have been able to reach the fourth floor. The wallpaper peeled in strips, curling like dried flesh. The bed was neatly made, but the mattress sagged heavily in the middle, as if someone had been lying there for days, maybe weeks. The worst part, however, was the mirror. A full-length standing mirror sat at the corner of the room, pointed not toward the bed or the door, but toward the middle of the empty space, almost like it had been positioned to watch something or someone. Ethan caught his reflection from the side. For a split second, he saw himself standing in the doorway. But the reflection wasn't moving like he was. His own mirrored figure stood perfectly still, staring directly at him. Even though Ethan's head had turned slightly, a chill clenched his chest. He blinked hard. The reflection corrected itself. Just stress. That's all. He dropped his bag on the floor and checked the bathroom. The tiles were cracked, and water stains spread across the ceiling like veins. The shower curtain moved slightly, though he hadn't touched it. He pulled it back quickly. Nothing there. No window, no vent big enough for wind. Yet the curtain swayed, as if someone had just slipped past it. The lights flickered again. When he stepped back into the room, the temperature dropped sharply. His breath turned visible. The mirror had fogged over despite the cold. At the center of the fog, a sentence appeared, not written with a finger, but revealed from beneath the condensation, as though the message had always been etched into the glass. "Don't sleep here." Ethan froze. His heart pounded against his ribs. He wanted to laugh it off. Maybe some previous guest had left the message, but the way the letters slowly emerged, one by one, made his skin crawl, almost like someone on the other side of the mirror was writing them in real time. He backed away slowly. The light above him buzzed louder. The shadows in the corners deepened, stretching, reaching. Something thumped underneath the bed, soft at first, then louder, matching the rhythm of footsteps. 1, 2, 3, then silence. Ethan forced himself to kneel and lift the bedsheet. Darkness, thick, impenetrable darkness that didn't match the light in the room. It felt alive, shifting like black liquid. His hands trembled, but he couldn't stop staring into that void. Something stared back. Twin pinpricks of pale white eyes blinked from the darkness beneath the bed, not glowing, just faint enough to be visible, too human to be an animal, and too empty to belong to anything alive. Ethan scrambled backward, slamming into the dresser. The mirror shook violently, rattling as if something behind it wanted out. He stumbled toward the door, but the moment he grabbed the handle, it burned ice cold, freezing his skin to the metal. He yanked his hand back with a cry. The door did not move. The lights went out. The room plunged into total darkness, and in that suffocating blackness, Ethan heard a voice whisper right next to his ear. A broken voice, layered like several people speaking through one throat. "You shouldn't have come to room 404. The darkness around him shifted, closing in like a living thing. Ethan couldn't see, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His pulse hammered in his ears as something cold, colder than death, touched the side of his neck. That was when he realized the truth. Fear isn't something you outgrow. Fear is something that waits. And room 404 had been waiting a long, long time. Darkness swallowed Ethan whole, not the ordinary absence of light, but a heavy, smothering blackness that felt thick enough to touch. It pressed against his skin like cold, wet cloth, slipping into his lungs with each breath. The whisper that had crawled into his ear moments earlier still echoed inside his skull, repeating in a voice that seemed stitched together from broken, overlapping tones. You shouldn't have come to room 404. Ethan's trembling hands searched blindly for the wall. His fingertips brushed rough, peeling wallpaper, then something slick beneath it. Something that pulsed faintly, like it was alive. He jerked back in panic, stumbling through the dark until his shoulder collided with the dresser. He forced himself to steady his breathing. He needed light, any light. Fumbling desperately, he dug for his phone. When the screen flickered on, his heart nearly stopped. The battery was at 1%. It had drained the moment the lights went out. Still, the weak glow illuminated just enough for him to see the shape of the room. The shadows seemed to move on their own, sliding across the walls like liquid darkness. The fog on the mirror had returned, thicker this time, swirling as though stirred from the inside. Ethan turned toward the door, hoping the phone's screen would help him find the handle. But before he could take a step, something shifted behind him, a soft scraping sound. Like fingertips dragging slowly across the floor. He turned the phone toward the noise. At first, he saw nothing. Then, from beneath the bed's black curtain of darkness, a hand emerged. Not pale gray, like old clay that had dried and cracked. The fingers were long, impossibly thin, and they bent at wrong angles, joints wobbling with unnatural looseness. The hand clawed its way out, followed by an arm, then another. Ethan staggered back, almost dropping his phone. The thing beneath the bed wasn't crawling out. It was unfolding, its limbs stretched like a puppet pulled by invisible strings, joints popping in the silence. As it rose, its face emerged from the shadow, a face that wasn't shaped by bone, but by shifting darkness. Only the eyes were solid, two dim white orbs staring straight into him. Ethan's phone flickered. No, come on, he whispered desperately. The screen dimmed. The figure took one step toward him, body bending backwards in a way no human spine ever could. The screen died. Total darkness again. Ethan froze, every muscle locking under the crushing instinct that moving even an inch would mean death. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were inching inward. He could hear the thing breathing, now ragged, damp, uneven, like lungs filled with water. Then, a soft tap on his shoe. Ethan flinched violently. His hand flew up, patting the surrounding air for anything he could use: a lamp, a chair, something. His fingers brushed metal. The lamp. He grabbed it and swung blindly. The impact echoed, a hollow clang that sent vibrations down his arms. Something stumbled back, letting out a low, wet gurgle that made Ethan's stomach twist. He didn't waste another second. He sprinted through the dark toward the door, hands outstretched. He hit the wall, then slid along it, searching for the doorknob. Nothing. He searched again, still nothing. His breath quickened, his thoughts spiraled. The door had been right here, right here. He had just touched it minutes ago. His hands pressed against something warm, something that exhaled. Ethan recoiled instantly, heart slamming like a hammer inside his chest. The wall wasn't supposed to breathe, but it did. A deep, low inhale rippled across the surface beneath his palms, like there was something massive inside the walls. Pressing outward, the wallpaper began to bulge, stretching as though something was pushing from behind something with fingers. The bulges moved upward, toward his face. Ethan backed away until his heel caught on the carpet, almost tripping him. The unseen thing in the wall traced his movement, bulges sliding along the wallpaper like a predator pacing behind glass. Then the lights snapped on. The sudden brightness stung Ethan's eyes. He blinked rapidly, adjusting. The room looked normal again. No moving shadows, no breathing walls, no creature in the center. The bed was neatly made. The mirror was clean. Everything looked ordinary, as if nothing had happened, as if the room wanted him to think he had imagined it. But Ethan's shaking hands and the heavy thump of his pulse said otherwise, and the proof lay right in front of him. On the floor, where he had swung the lamp, lay a smear of something black and thick like tar. It pulsed faintly, as though alive. Ethan stepped back. Something dripped from above. He slowly lifted his gaze. A dark handprint stained the ceiling directly above him. Long fingers spread wide, dripping the same black substance. Another print appeared beside it, then another, more and more, like something with dozens of limbs was crawling along the ceiling, circling him. Ethan's breath hitched. The ceiling plaster began to crack. A voice, soft, distant, layered, flowed through the room again. "You cannot leave room 404, Ethan." His blood froze. It knew his name. The mirror flickered. A silhouette appeared inside it. A tall figure standing behind him. Too close, close enough to touch. Ethan turned around instinctively. Nothing was there. When he looked back at the mirror, the figure was now pressed against the glass from inside, its face distorted, white eyes unblinking. Then the whispers returned, not from behind him, not from the mirror, from underneath the floor. Soft, countless, moving. Something was beneath the room, and it was waking up. The air grew impossibly cold. His breath turned to frost. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. Room 404 plunged into darkness again, and this time, something whispered right beside him, not in words, but in a sound like wet teeth clacking together. The darkness moved, and Ethan understood. He was no longer alone in the room. He was surrounded. The darkness in room 404 no longer felt like the absence of light. It felt like a living presence, thick and heavy, watching Ethan from every direction. He couldn't see his hands in front of him, couldn't hear anything except his own rapid breathing and the faint sound of something shifting beneath the floorboards. The whispers continued, no longer a single voice, but dozens of them, overlapping, as though countless mouths were pressed against the wooden floor, murmuring in a language that scraped at the edges of his sanity. His fingers trembled as he reached toward where he thought the dresser was. If he could find his backpack, maybe his spare flashlight. But before he could take a step, the floor under his right foot dipped, not cracked, dipped, as if something massive moved beneath it. Ethan froze. A slow, heavy pulse throbbed beneath the boards. Another and another, like a heartbeat the size of the entire room. His breath hitched. He stepped back carefully, only for the floor behind him to dip too. Whatever was beneath 404 was not small, and it was moving. A sudden thud echoed through the room, sharp, metallic, followed by the sound of wood splintering. Ethan stumbled backward until he hit the wall, his shaking hands scraping desperately for the doorknob that he knew wasn't there anymore. The whispers grew louder, then they stopped. Silence. Total, suffocating silence. Ethan held his breath. For 3 long seconds, nothing moved. Then, a single eye opened beneath the floor. A circular crack split across the boards, and through it, Ethan saw a pale, enormous eye staring up at him, white, glossy, and disturbingly human, yet wrong in every way. The pupil dilated sharply the moment it locked onto him. Ethan gasped and stumbled back, tripping over the nightstand. His spine slammed into the wall. The eye tracked every movement. The floorboards around the crack began to buckle upward, as if something beneath was pushing to rise. No, 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 Ethan whispered, scrambling sideways. The boards burst open. A tendril of inky blackness shot upward, slapping onto the wall inches from his face. Another followed, then another, curling and twisting unnaturally like shadow-made flesh. They crawled toward him, leaving trails of cold, wet residue on the wallpaper. Ethan lunged toward the bed, diving underneath out of pure instinct. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then he realized where he was. The darkness under the bed wasn't just shadow, it was a void, cold and endless, swallowing even the faintest hint of light. It felt open, like he had crawled into a mouth waiting to close. A soft exhale puffed against his cheek. Ethan froze. 2 pale white eyes blinked open inches from his face. He scrambled out from under the bed, rolling onto the carpet. Something long and thin brushed his ankle, but he kicked free, gasping. The tendrils rising from the broken floor followed him, stretching across the room like black vines hunting prey. The mirror suddenly flickered with light. Ethan whipped his head toward it. The reflection in the mirror was not him. It was a distorted version of himself, skin pale, eyes hollow, mouth open in a silent scream. Behind mirrored Ethan stood the tall, twisted creature with the white eyes, its hands resting on his shoulders like a puppeteer. Then mirrored Ethan lifted a hand, pointing directly at him, the real Ethan. His heart dropped. The creature behind the reflection tilted its head, slow and unnatural. Its long fingers tightened on mirrored Ethan's shoulders, and the reflection began to crack, spiderweb fractures spreading across the glass. Ethan backed away. No, stay back. The mirror shattered outward, not inward. Outward, shards exploded into the room like silver daggers. Ethan shielded his face as glass tore into the walls and carpet. A cold wind burst out of the shattered frame, an impossible gust that smelled like wet soil, old metal, and something dead. From inside the broken mirror, mirror frame. A figure stepped out. It wasn't the distorted reflection. It wasn't even human. It was the tall creature, the same one that had been hiding in the shadows, dripping with thick black fluid, joints bending backward as it crawled through the torn opening between worlds. Its head twitched, its arms dangled like ropes, its chest rose with slow, heavy breaths. Ethan scrambled toward the door. He didn't care if it had disappeared. He clawed at the wall, desperate, frantic. His fingers found a crack, a small one, then another. He dug his nails into the wallpaper, ripping it off in frantic swipes. There was a door beneath the wall, a real door. Someone or something had covered it with wallpaper to hide it. He grabbed the handle. It was ice cold. The creature behind him exhaled sharply. The air thinned as if the entire room inhaled at once. Ethan yanked the door open, and a massive force slammed into his back, sending him crashing through the doorway and into pitch blackness beyond. The door slammed shut behind him. He wasn't in the hallway. He wasn't anywhere in the hotel. He had entered something else entirely. Something older. Something that had been waiting. The darkness around him vibrated with a low, humming pulse, and the countless whispers rose again. You belong to 404 now. Ethan hit the ground so hard that the air was punched out of his lungs. He gasped, clutching the cold floor beneath him. But the moment he opened his eyes, he realized he was no longer on any floor made by human hands. The surface beneath him was smooth, damp, and disturbingly warm, like skin stretched tight over something moving below it. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He scrambled backward, but there was no wall behind him, just endless darkness stretching into nothingness. The door he had fallen through was gone. No outline, no frame, no trace that it had ever existed. He wasn't in a hallway. He wasn't in the hotel. He had been dragged into a place that felt like the space between breaths, between nightmares and waking reality. A low, rhythmic hum vibrated through the darkness, pulsing around him like a heartbeat too large and too slow to belong to anything human. The floor beneath his palms pulsed with it. The air shivered with it. Every breath he took felt like inhaling coal, living shadows. He stood up unsteadily, his legs trembling beneath him. The darkness seemed to bend and shift with his movements, not reacting to him, but studying him, trying to understand him, trying to taste his fear. A faint glow flickered in the distance. Ethan squinted. The light pulsed weakly, like a dying lantern. With nothing else to guide him, he began walking toward it. Each step sank slightly into the soft, warm ground, producing a sound like wet fabric stretching. The glow grew brighter, revealing the walls around him. If they could even be called walls. They weren't solid. They rippled like sheer curtains made of smoke, constantly changing shape, stretching outward, and then collapsing inward, like lungs breathing. Shadows inside the walls moved independently, pacing back and forth like animals in cages. Some whispered, some sobbed, some laughed, a broken, hollow laughter that made Ethan's stomach twist. He reached the source of the glow. It was a window, an actual hotel window exactly like the one in room 404, but suspended in the darkness with no frame, no wall, no structure holding it. The glass shimmered with an oily reflection. Ethan stepped closer and looked through it. His His blood ran cold. He wasn't looking outside. He was looking into room 404. The room was empty except for one thing. A figure stood in the center him, an exact reflection of himself. Except its head twitched in quick, unnatural jerks. Its arms hung loosely, too long, fingertips nearly brushing the floor. Its eyes were completely black, absorbing all light. It turned sharply and looked directly at Ethan through the window. Ethan stumbled backward. His reflection tilted its head, slowly, unnervingly. Then it raised one hand and placed its palm against the inside of the glass. Ethan felt a cold burn flare across his own palm. He looked down. A black, hand-shaped mark was forming on his skin, the identical shape of the reflection's palm. The reflection began to smile wide, unnatural, stretching farther than human cheeks were meant to go. The lights behind the reflection flickered violently. The mattress on the bed in room 404 sagged deeper, as if something heavy pressed down on it. The shadows inside the room writhed like smoke underwater. Then the reflection spoke. Its voice didn't come from the window. It came from behind Ethan. A chorus of overlapping tones whispered directly into his ear. You never escaped 404. Ethan spun around. The darkness behind him rippled and parted like a curtain. A towering silhouette emerged, its long limbs stretching, its body unfolding like an insect dragging itself out of a shell. Its head scraped the unseen ceiling, bending unnaturally as it leaned down toward him. Its eyes blinked open white, empty yet horribly aware. Ethan stumbled back toward the floating window. Behind the creature, more shapes stirred inside the rippling walls. Dozens of them, some humanoid, some twisted into forms that defied anatomy, all turning their heads toward him in jerky, unnatural motions. The massive figure leaned closer. Its voice vibrated through the ground, through Ethan's bones, through the darkness itself. Room 404 is not a place. Its chest swelled with a slow, shuddering inhale. It is a mouth. The ground beneath Ethan's feet shifted. No opened. The surface tore apart like wet paper, revealing a horrifying truth beneath it. A massive, circular maw lined with uneven teeth, shifting and rearranging like a living puzzle. A long, slow breath rose from its depths. Ethan lost his footing and fell, catching himself on the edge of the living floor. The mouth exhaled cold air that smelled of damp stone and old, forgotten graves. The creature above him watched, not moving, not helping, just waiting. Ethan's fingers slipped. He screamed. He fell down into the maw of 404. The darkness swallowed him whole. Ethan didn't hit the bottom. He fell through it. The darkness didn't behave like normal space. It behaved like water cold, crushing, thick yet. He didn't drown. Instead, he drifted downward, suspended in a void where sound had no direction and time had no meaning. His limbs felt weightless, numb, as if the darkness itself was draining the warmth from his body. He tried to scream, but the sound dissolved before it reached his ears. Shapes drifted beside him, pale outlines of rooms, hallways, doors, people, like memories of the hotel carved into shadows and suspended in black fluid. One shape floated past his face, a woman, eyes wide open, hair drifting as though underwater. Her mouth moved silently, forming words Ethan couldn't hear. Her hands reached out to him, but her fingers dissolved into mist before touching his skin. More figures appeared around him. Staff uniforms, guest clothes, people of different eras, all suspended, all drifting, all staring, all trapped. Ethan felt the darkness pull harder, like a current dragging him deeper. His chest tightened. Panic surged. He kicked against the nothingness, but the more he struggled, the stronger the pull became. Then suddenly light, a dim, reddish glow appeared far below him, growing brighter until it illuminated the entire void. And with that light came a sound, slow, thunderous, rhythmic, a heartbeat, the same massive heartbeat he felt through the floors of room 404. The darkness peeled away, separating into long tendrils that slithered aside. Ethan felt the pull strengthen, dragging him downward faster, as if the void itself was eager to deliver him to whatever lay below. The reddish glow revealed a surface, a living surface. He dropped onto it soft, pulsing, warm. He gagged as the realization struck. The ground was not ground, it was flesh. Thick, veined, undulating flesh that rose and fell with each enormous breath. He pushed himself to his feet, trembling. A cavern stretched out in all directions. Organic walls pulsing with dim red light, veins glowing like embers beneath semi-translucent tissue. The air smelled metallic and decayed, like rusting iron mixed with mildew and something long dead. Far ahead, something enormous shifted. Ethan froze. At first, he thought it was simply part of the fleshy landscape, a bulge moving with the heartbeat. But then it lifted, a massive structure rising from the floor, unfolding like a creature waking from sleep, two gargantuan eyes white. Empty, unblinking, opened. A sound like 1,000 whispers exhaling at once shook the cavern. Ethan stumbled backward, slipping on the slick surface. The massive eyes blinked again, focusing directly on him. He wasn't standing inside a room. He wasn't inside a building. He was inside a body, a colossal, ancient, impossible entity, something older than the hotel, something the hotel had been built around. Like a cage wrapped in concrete and wallpaper, the monstrous eye moved closer, sliding through the tissue of the cavern with unsettling grace. Ethan tried to run. The ground rippled beneath his feet, muscle contracting, tightening, pushing him backward. Tendrils burst from the floor like veins turning into ropes, twisting around his ankles, dragging him toward the creature. He screamed, clawing at the slick flesh. His fingers slipped. The tendrils tightened. The massive eye widened, its pupil dilating like a predator preparing to strike. A vibration shook the cavern. A voice deep, ancient, layered, resonated through the living walls. "You are inside me." The tendrils yanked Ethan forward. He slid across the pulsing ground like a rag doll, pulled toward a massive vertical opening forming in front of the creature, an enormous slit lined with grinding teeth, dripping thick black fluid. The maw opened wider. The whispers around him grew louder, voices of the trapped, the consumed, the forgotten, begging, warning, crying, pulling at his mind from every angle. Ethan forced his hands against the fleshy ground, muscles straining, veins shaking. He screamed in raw panic, pushing against the pull of the tendrils. For a second, the pull weakened. Just a second, but it was enough. A tear in the flesh opened beside him, sudden and sharp, like the cavern itself was reacting to something. A bright slash of white light poured through it, cold, piercing, unreal. It looked like a doorway, a way out. Ethan didn't hesitate. He kicked violently, wrenching his foot free of the tendrils. One wrapped around his leg, tearing through his jeans and skin. But adrenaline drowned the pain. He lunged toward the tear in the flesh. The enormous creature roared a sound so deep Ethan felt it in his bones. The tear began to close. Ethan dove. His fingers touched the light. The tendrils closed on his ankles. He screamed and yanked with everything he had, and the world split in two. A violent blast of cold air hit him. The flesh vanished. The red glow faded. He tumbled onto a hard, wooden floor. Light returned. Noise returned. Reality returned. Ethan lay on the floor of a hallway, the fourth floor of the Hawthorne Hotel. Room doors lined both sides. The faint smell of cleaning chemicals filled the air. A cart rattled in the distance. He was back. He was out. He had escaped. But then he looked to his left. Room 404 stood only a few feet away, and the door was slowly opening. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He was back in the hallway, yet nothing felt real. His hands trembled violently as he pushed himself upright, his palms still stinging with the ghostly cold he had carried out of the creature's body. His heart hammered so loudly that it drowned out every other sound except the soft, slow creak of a hinge nearby. The door of room 404 continued to open, just a sliver at first, then wider. A wash of cold air drifted out, carrying a low, rhythmic hum, the same hum he had heard in the fleshy cavern, the pulse of the monstrous thing he had barely escaped. Ethan scrambled backward on all fours, his shoes slipping across the polished wooden floor. His voice cracked as he whispered, "No, stay away, stay away." The door fully opened, but instead of the room's interior, instead of furniture or wallpaper or darkness, he saw himself, not a reflection, not a distorted mimic from the window, a full, living version of himself standing inside the doorway, staring at him with lifeless, hollow eyes. The other Ethan tilted his head slowly, like a puppet whose strings were being tugged from somewhere deep underground. Then it stepped out into the hallway. Its movements were sharp, unnatural, joints bending with audible cracks. Its face remained expressionless, but the skin around its eyes twitched in small, glitch-like spasms, as if it was struggling to maintain a human shape. Ethan crawled backward frantically. "What are you?" The duplicate opened its mouth, not to speak, to breathe. A long, rattled inhale as though dragging air through lungs filled with liquid. The walls of the hallway flickered like dying lights, and shadows pulsed outward from 404, stretching across the wallpaper like living veins. Then the duplicate Ethan whispered, voice layered with the same chorus of overlapping tones that haunted the void. You brought it back with you. Ethan's blood turned to ice. What does that mean? But before he could stand, his duplicate raised its arm and pointed downward toward Ethan's shadow. Ethan looked. His shadow was wrong. It wasn't flat. It wasn't still. It was moving. A second set of limbs stretched from it. A long, thin arm crawled out from the darkness cast beneath his body, fingers bending backward like broken branches. Another arm followed, then a head elongated, faceless, trembling as though being molded into existence. Ethan scrambled to his feet, kicking his own living shadow, but the thing emerging only grew faster, its form rising from two-dimensional darkness into solid, cold shape. The duplicate Ethan watched without blinking. You opened a door, it said. You let it out, and now it wants your shape. Ethan stumbled down the hallway, running blindly toward the elevator. His shoes pounded against the floor, but the thumps behind him grew louder. Footsteps that didn't match his pace. The shadow creature had fully emerged, tall, thin, body warped like a stretched silhouette given flesh. Its movements were chaotic, jerking like a glitching image. It sprinted after him with unnatural speed. Ethan slammed his hand against the elevator button repeatedly. Come on, come on, come on. The light above the elevator flickered. The doors in the hallway began to open one by one. 402, 403, 405. From each door, dark hands reached out, grasping the air, clawing toward him, as if the hotel walls themselves were pulling apart to reclaim him. A deep rumble shook the entire floor. The wallpaper rippled like skin shuddering in anticipation. A low groan echoed through the corridor, not from a person, not from machinery, but something massive shifting somewhere deep behind the walls. The heartbeat returned, slow, heavy, ancient. Thump, thump, thump. Ethan pressed himself against the wall, watching as the shadow creature screeched, its mouth stretching far too wide, splitting its face open as it lunged forward. Dark tar-like saliva dripped from its jaw. The duplicate Ethan stood behind it calmly, tilting his head again. You can't outrun what you brought, it whispered. You're still connected. The connection. Ethan looked down at his palm. The black handprint still burned faintly on his skin, pulsing like a parasite feeding off his heartbeat. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open halfway, then stuttered. Then froze. Inside the elevator, darkness pooled at the far corner, thick, swirling like a fog with teeth. Not safety, a trap. Room 404 did not want him to escape this way. The shadow creature hissed and sprinted toward him. Ethan dodged aside at the last second, slamming his shoulder into the wall. The creature crashed into the elevator doors, bending metal inward with a horrifying shriek. Then the lights died. Pitch blackness swallowed everything. In the dark, Ethan heard the creature breathing right next to him, wet, jagged, unnatural. He couldn't see, he couldn't run, he couldn't breathe. Then a warm light snapped on a few feet ahead. Not a bulb, not a window, a door. A door Ethan remembered from childhood. A door to a house that had burned down 10 years ago. A door that shouldn't exist here, but it was open, and someone inside whispered, Ethan, hurry. Ethan didn't think. He ran toward the impossible doorway as the shadow creature lunged at him from behind. He dove through the light and vanished. Ethan crashed through the doorway of light so violently that he rolled across a wooden floor, his palms burning as he scrambled to stop himself. The brightness behind him snapped shut like a slamming door, and the hallway, the shadow creature, the hotel, everything vanished in an instant. Silence. Dust floated in thin beams of afternoon sunlight, cutting through cracks in boarded windows. The air smelled of burnt wood and old memories, hauntingly familiar. When Ethan lifted his head, the realization hit him like a blow to the chest. He was inside the remains of his childhood home, the one that burned down when he was 10, a home that no longer existed in the real world. His breath shook as he looked around. The walls were half charred. Fragments of wallpaper still clung to them like peeling skin. The living room was frozen in the moment before the fire consumed it. Photographs melted into frames, furniture half collapsed, the ceiling blackened and sagging. Everything felt both real and dreamlike, like a room resurrected from smoke and memory. A soft creak echoed from the hallway. Ethan spun toward the sound. "Hello," he called, voice trembling. No answer. Then he heard it again. A slow, dragging step, followed by another. He backed away from the hallway, but the sound grew closer, footsteps scraping across the warped wooden floorboards, heavy and uneven. He could almost picture something pulling itself along, each step forced, as though its limbs didn't move the way they should. "Mom," Ethan whispered before he could stop himself. The footsteps stopped instantly. A chill swept through the room. When the voice came, it was wrong. It was soft, familiar, but layered, like a recording being played backward through broken speakers. "Ethan, honey, come here." His stomach dropped. That wasn't his mother's voice. That wasn't anything's voice. It was room 404, wearing his mother's memory like a mask. The hallway darkened, shadows stretching across the floor like fingers reaching into the living room. The boards began to bulge as something heavy pressed against them from beneath, moving slowly, sinuously, like a creature swimming through the wood. Ethan stepped back until he hit the half-burned couch. His pulse hammered. "I'm not going to fall for it," he whispered. "You're not her." The voice giggled, a warped, childish giggle. "But you came when you heard her." The boards in the hallway cracked open. A hand too thin, skin gray and tight over bones, slipped out, dragging long claws across the floor as if tasting it. Then an arm, then a shoulder, bending at an impossible angle as the creature squeezed through the floor like a human-shaped shadow, forcing itself out of a crack. Ethan spun and ran toward the back of the house, the kitchen, the hallway leading to the staircase. Anywhere. He sprinted through the burned living room, ducking beneath fallen beams and shattered shelves. The whole house groaned above him, as if remembering the night it died. Ash drifted from the ceiling like black snow. Behind him, the creature crawled out fully, its body stretched and jerking, its head tilted sideways as if held by loose wires. Its jaw hung open, but no sound came out, only a dull clicking, like teeth tapping against teeth. Ethan bolted into the kitchen, slamming himself behind the remains of a counter. His chest heaved. The kitchen looked almost identical to how he remembered it, right down to the old refrigerator. Its door melted into the floor, and the window that once overlooked the backyard. He peeked around the counter. The creature had entered the kitchen, slowly, jerking in uneven motions, like a puppet controlled by too many hands. It paused in the center of the room and sniffed the air. Sniffed. For him, Ethan covered his mouth, forcing himself not to breathe. The creature's head snapped toward the sound of his heartbeat. Its empty eye sockets widened. It heard him anyway. It lunged. Ethan jumped to his feet and sprinted toward the back door. He grabbed the handle and yanked. Locked. He slammed his shoulder into it. It didn't budge. The creature's fingers brushed the back of his shirt. He spun and hurled a broken chair at it. The chair shattered, splinters embedding into the creature's chest. It didn't flinch, didn't bleed. It only tilted its head again, as if curious about why he thought that would work. The walls shook violently. The floor trembled. And then something worse happened. The back door behind Ethan began to disappear, melting into the wall as if erased by invisible hands. The window vanished next, then the cabinets, then the floor tiles. The entire kitchen was being devoured by the same void he had fallen through earlier. Room 404 was reclaiming him. The creature lunged again. Ethan dove through the collapsing counter, rolling across the floor and sprinting toward the only place left, the staircase. He grabbed the charred railing and raced upward as the creature scrambled after him, its claws scraping sparks from the wood. Halfway up, the entire house shuddered. The walls around the staircase melted like wax. A gaping hole opened beneath Ethan's feet. He leapt, caught the top step, and pulled himself over. Just as the stairs dissolved into the void, he collapsed onto the upper floor, gasping for breath. The door to his childhood bedroom stood at the end of the hall. Its light was on. A soft glow spilled beneath the crack. Something inside whispered, "I've been waiting." Ethan lay on the charred floor, chest heaving, his entire body trembling with exhaustion and terror. The upper hallway of the burned house felt impossibly long, stretching deeper into a darkness that seemed to breathe. The wooden boards beneath him groaned not from weight, but from movement, like something inside the floor was shifting in anticipation. His eyes locked onto the door at the end of the hall, his childhood bedroom, the only room untouched by fire in this recreated nightmare. A warm light spilled gently from underneath the door, inviting, familiar. It glowed like a safe memory, like comfort, like the last place he had ever felt innocent. But Ethan knew better. Nothing in this place was what it seemed. He rose slowly, each movement cautious, his ears tuned to every creak and whisper. Behind him, at the bottom of the vanished staircase, he heard a single tap, a claw against wood. The creature was still below, still searching, still hungry. He backed away, eyes never leaving the glowing bedroom door. The hallway squeezed inward the farther he stepped, the walls bending subtly as though the house itself was leaning closer to listen. The air thickened with the scent of old smoke and something metallic. Then the voice came again, that same twisted, mother-shaped voice. "Ethan, sweetheart, come inside. You're safe here." His throat tightened. He wanted to run. He wanted to scream. But something deeper, some primal, wounded part of him wanted to answer, wanted to step into the last memory of home he had left. He forced himself to speak. "Stop using her voice." The silence that followed was heavy and offended, like the darkness had emotions. Then, "I'm not using her voice." Ethan froze. The sentence came not from the hallway, not from behind the door. It came from right behind him. He spun around. No one was there, but the whisper brushed the back of his neck, warm and wet, like breath dripping with moisture. He stumbled backward until his hand brushed the bedroom doorknob. It was warm, too warm, like something alive was on the other side. The boards creaked behind him. Slow footsteps. Up the hallway. The creature was climbing the wall itself, its limbs bending backward as it dragged itself vertically like a spider. He didn't have time. Ethan swallowed hard, grabbed the doorknob, and shoved the door open. What lay inside made his blood run cold. His childhood bedroom had been perfectly reconstructed, but wrong in thousands of small ways. The walls were plastered with his old drawings, except every drawing showed the same thing. A tall, thin figure standing in the corner, watching him sleep, watching him play, watching him eat, watching him cry. He backed into the room slowly. The floorboards were clean, untouched by fire. His bed was neatly made, the blue blanket tucked perfectly around the edges. His old lamp glowed warmly on the nightstand, but the closet door was open, just a crack, and something breathed inside it. The creature's claws scraped into the hallway behind him. Ethan slammed the bedroom door shut and locked it, even though he knew locks meant nothing in this place. The door pulsed once under his hand, like something pressed its forehead against the wood from the other side. He turned toward the closet. A cold wind drifted out from the narrow opening, carrying the smell of damp soil and rusted metal. The hangers inside swayed, though no air should have been moving. He stepped closer. The closet seemed deeper than he remembered, far deeper, stretching into a blackness that swallowed the bedroom light. A faint shape moved inside, a small shape, a child-sized shadow. Ethan's heart skipped. "No," he whispered. "No, it can't be you." Then the shadow stepped forward. It was him, not the adult Ethan, but 10-year-old Ethan, exactly as he looked the night of the fire. Same pajamas, same barefoot stance, same fearful eyes. The child. Ethan stared silently, head tilted slightly, lips trembling as though trying to form words that wouldn't come. Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. "Why are you here?" he whispered. "What are you?" The child. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but the only sound that emerged was a long, ragged inhale. Not a child's breath, a creature's breath. The child's shadow stretched unnaturally across the room, limbs elongating, fingers dragging like claws. The real form beneath the illusion began to tear through the child shape. like something wearing a mask too tight for its bones. Ethan stumbled backward. The closet expanded, the walls pulling away, the light dying, the door behind him vibrating as the creature in the hallway slammed into it. The child shadow twisted into a monstrous silhouette, with elongated arms and a gaping void where a face should be. All at once, reality fractured. The bedroom door splintered. The closet tore open. Two different creatures lunged toward him, and the floor beneath Ethan's feet split apart, revealing the same yawning void from the creature's stomach. He fell again into the darkness, and the last thing he heard before the world shattered into black were the overlapping voices whispering, "Back to the room. Back to 404. Ethan fell into the darkness as though gravity itself had forgotten its purpose. There was no sense of up or down, only motion, only cold, only the oppressive weight of something ancient watching from all sides. The void swallowed him in silence, until a faint buzzing began to echo through the black, not like insects, not like light, more like electricity humming through broken wires. Then, click, a single fluorescent light snapped on above him. Ethan's body jolted as he landed on solid ground, his knees slamming against cold linoleum. He groaned and pushed himself upright, blinking against the harsh white glare. He was in a hallway, not the burned house, not the hotel, not the fleshy cavern. A hospital hallway, sterile tiles, flickering fluorescent bulbs, peeling posters about hand washing and emergency exits. A rolling gurney abandoned in the middle of the corridor. Everything smelled like antiseptic and loneliness. Ethan's breath trembled. I don't understand. The hospital was silent, too silent. No footsteps, no voices, only the faint hum of the lights flickering in and out as though struggling to stay alive. He took a few steps forward, shoes squeaking faintly on the floor. Then he saw something that froze him completely. A sign hanging crooked from the ceiling. Unit 404. Restricted access. Ethan staggered back. No, this isn't real. This isn't real. But the hall stretched forward, leading only toward Unit 404. The opposite direction had collapsed. The ceiling caved in, blocking all escape. There was nowhere else to go. He tried to steady his breathing as he walked slowly toward the door marked 404. Beside it sat a row of old metal chairs, some rusted, one overturned, one covered in dried brown stains Ethan didn't want to think about. A vending machine flickered in the corner, its screen glitching, the soda cans inside vibrating as though something inside the machine wanted out. He glanced at his reflection in the machine's dusty glass. He froze. His reflection wasn't moving like him. It breathed slower, blinking at a different rhythm, head tilted at a sharper angle, and then it grinned. The smile spread across the reflection's face with unnatural precision, stretching wider until the skin around its mouth tore slightly. Ethan backed away, pulse racing. The vending machine lights died. He was plunged into darkness again until every single light in the hallway snapped back on at once. The door to Unit 404 clicked open. A soft creak echoed across the hall. Ethan stared at the doorway. Warm orange light spilled from inside, flickering like candle flame. He swallowed, forcing himself forward, even as his legs begged him to run. He stepped inside Unit 404. The room was enormous, too enormous to exist inside any hospital. It stretched impossibly long, walls bending outward in strange curves, ceiling disappearing into black. The only illumination came from dozens of medical monitors scattered throughout the space, each showing the same thing: a heartbeat, slow, steady, massive. Ethan walked deeper. In the center of the impossible room stood a hospital bed. A single figure lay on it, connected to wires, strapped down with leather restraints, chest rising and falling weakly. Ethan approached the bed slowly. When he reached the side, his blood ran cold. It was him, a sleeping version of himself. Pale, trembling, eyes twitching beneath closed lids as though trapped in a nightmare. "No," Ethan whispered. "No, this isn't me." The sleeping Ethan let out a sharp inhale. His eyes opened, but the eyes were wrong white, blank, reflective like polished bone. His mouth opened slowly, cracks forming in the corners. "You never left the room." Ethan stumbled backwards so fast he tripped over a medical cart. The sleeping version of him lifted its head, spine cracking audibly, and stared directly at Ethan. Then every monitor in the room began to pulse. Thump, thump, thump. The heartbeat sound grew louder and louder until the screens trembled and the wires shook. The walls began to melt, dripping like wax, revealing fleshy tissue beneath. Unit 404 was transforming, becoming what it truly was. Ethan screamed and scrambled away as the bed twisted, the sleeping version of himself convulsing, his body stretching, bones lengthening, face dissolving into a mass of shifting shadows. The entire room bent inward like a giant mouth preparing to swallow him. The sleeping Ethan creature lunged. Ethan spun toward the collapsing doorway, but the door was gone. In its place was a window, a single hotel window. From room 404, light flickered inside the room. The bed, the mirror, the sagging mattress. It was all there. He saw himself inside the hotel room, standing frozen in terror. Another version of him. The window rippled like water, and the monster behind him screamed. And Ethan did the only thing he could. He jumped straight through the window. The world shattered into white light, and the voices whispered, "You keep returning because you belong here." Ethan burst through the glowing hotel window as if thrown by an unseen force, crashing onto a cold, wooden surface. His lungs seized, his vision blurred white, and his body felt numb, like he had been dragged across dimensions too fast for flesh to comprehend. When the glow finally faded, he pushed himself up slowly, shakily, and his stomach twisted. He was back inside room 404, but the room had changed. It was not the abandoned, decayed version he had entered before. It was pristine, clean, perfectly made. Like the hotel had freshly prepared it. The bed was neatly tucked, the carpet spotless, the mirror polished. It looked normal. Too normal. Ethan pressed his hand against the bed, warm, like someone had just been lying there. He swallowed hard. No, not again. A soft ding echoed behind him. He turned. The hotel elevator was open, right outside his room door, as if the hallway had rearranged itself. Ethan stepped toward the doorway cautiously. His shadow stretched across the carpet longer than it should have been, thinner, like an emaciated version of him crawling behind his own body. He reached the doorway. The elevator remained open, glowing with a soft, golden light that shouldn't have belonged in an old hotel. The warm illumination was inviting, comforting, utterly wrong. It hummed invitingly, like a lullaby. As he took another step forward, the mirror inside room 404 flickered behind him. He turned. Something stood inside the reflection, the hospital version of him, pale, trembling, eyes white and empty, not moving, just watching. The reflection raised a trembling finger and pointed toward the elevator. Ethan froze. What do you want from me? The reflection didn't speak, but the room did. A deep, slow heartbeat thudded beneath the floorboards. Thump, thump, thump. The same pulse from the monstrous flesh cavern. The room vibrated with it. Ethan's legs weakened. His vision shimmered. The wallpaper sagged inward, bulging as if something pressed it from behind, struggling to claw its way into the room. He backed away from the walls, but the mirror behind him began to fog. Words appeared slowly through the condensation. Get in the elevator. He shook his head violently. No, I'm not going in there. I'm not playing this game. The lights overhead exploded one by one. Pop, pop, pop. Darkness swallowed the room. Only the elevator's warm glow remained. Then a sound, wet, heavy, echoed behind him, something crawling out from under the bed. Ethan spun around in terror. A faint hand, thin, gray, fingers bending at wrong angles, slid out across the carpet. Then an arm, then a shoulder, then the same faceless shadow creature from the hospital dragging itself toward him with jerking, unnatural movements. Behind him, the elevator light flickered. The creature lunged. Ethan sprinted for the elevator with everything he had left. His fingers slammed the closed door button repeatedly as the creature's limbs scraped across the carpet, reaching for his ankles. The doors began to slide shut. The creature shrieked a hollow, scraping scream, and its arm shot forward. The elevator doors sliced through the shadow limb. The severed piece on the floor evaporated into dark smoke. The elevator hummed. The lights inside warmed. Ethan collapsed against the wall, panting, trembling uncontrollably. Then the elevator moved. But it didn't go up or down. It moved sideways. Ethan's stomach lurched. The walls vibrated unnaturally, lights flickering in spirals. He grabbed the railing to keep his balance. The elevator shook violently, then stopped. The doors opened. Ethan expected a hallway, or another nightmare, or another impossible room, but instead, he stepped into a forest, a dark, dense forest illuminated by a pale moon. Trees twisted into crooked silhouettes, branches reaching like skeletal fingers. Fog drifted low across the ground, swallowing his ankles. Behind him, the elevator disappeared. Ethan's breath fogged in the freezing air. He spun in a circle. This forest wasn't real. This wasn't the world. It was another layer, another trap, another manifestation of room 404. A twig snapped behind him. He turned slowly. A figure stood among the trees. Tall, thin, still. The same figure from his drawings. The same figure from the burned bedroom. The same figure from under the bed, the same figure wearing his shadow. It stepped forward and spoke in Ethan's voice. "You're almost home." The forest lights dimmed, the moon flickered, the world pulsed, and Ethan realized there was nowhere left to run. The forest breathed around Ethan, not with wind, not with life, but with something deeper, something ancient. Every tree seemed to lean toward him, their branches creaking as though straining to hear his heartbeat. Fog drifted between their roots, thick and cold, brushing against his ankles like fingers testing his presence. Ethan took a step back from the tall shadow figure. It mirrored him perfectly down to the tilt of his head, the trembling in his fingers, the rapid rise and fall of his chest. Only its face wasn't a face. It was a smooth void, a blank oval stretching like wet clay. Its voice, however, was unmistakably his. "You're almost home, Ethan." His breath hitched. "What are you? What do you want from me?" The shadow, Ethan, tilted its head again slowly, unnervingly, and the forest dimmed as if reacting to the movement. "You keep asking the wrong question." The ground shifted beneath Ethan's shoes. Not soft soil, something firmer, something smoother. He looked down and felt ice shoot through his veins. The forest floor was turning into carpet, hotel carpet, dark red, pattern familiar. Ethan took another step back, and the carpet spread beneath his feet like an infection. The trees around him shuddered, bark cracking open to reveal plaster beneath. Leaves dissolved into white dust. Fog drained away, sinking into seams on the floor. The forest wasn't disappearing. It was peeling away, like wallpaper, revealing the truth beneath. Ethan's chest tightened. No, don't do this." The shadow version of him stepped closer. "You were never in a forest." Its voice layered into dozens of versions of Ethan's voice, different ages, different tones, like every memory of him had been merged into one twisted identity. The last of the trees crumbled, revealing the hotel hallway, long, endless, lit by flickering lights. Ethan stumbled backward onto fully revealed carpet as the illusion stripped itself away. Room 404 stood at the end of the hallway, its door open, a black void swirling inside. Ethan shook his head violently, stumbling to the wall for support. "No, I escaped you. I left you behind. I got out." The shadow Ethan stopped walking and simply stood, unmoving, posture perfect. "Look at your hand." Ethan froze. He slowly lifted his palm. The black handprint from the reflection had spread dark veins spidering across his skin, pulsing in time with a heartbeat that wasn't his. The mark climbed up his wrist, tightening like a living brand. He tried to rub it off. "It burned." He cried out. The shadow spoke again. "You belong to the room now." A sudden tremor rippled through the hallway. The walls bulged outward like lungs inhaling. The ceiling cracked open, revealing the fleshy cavern he had fallen into earlier. The monstrous organism embedded behind every wall. Ethan stumbled forward in pure terror. The door to room 404 was pulling him in, not metaphorically, literally. A force yanked at his chest, dragging him forward inch by inch. Ethan dug his nails into the carpet. No. The shadow Ethan crouched beside him, tilting its faceless head. "Stop fighting. The room feeds on resistance." "I don't care. I'm not going back inside that thing." The shadow opened its mouth slowly. too wide. A distorted version of Ethan's scream echoed from inside it, as though his own voice had been trapped and replayed. Behind them, the walls split open, hundreds of pale arms long. Thin, Gray pushed through the cracked plaster, reaching blindly for him. Their fingers scraped the carpet, clawing, trembling with hunger. Ethan screamed and crawled away, but the hallway stretched longer, impossibly long. The doorway to 404 drifted farther as the carpet pulled him closer. The shadow walked behind him at a calm, unhurried pace. You keep trying to escape through realities that don't belong to you. Multiple voices whispered the rest. Because the room is the only reality that remembers you. The hands crawling from the walls grabbed Ethan's ankles. Cold, slimy, strong. He kicked wildly, but more hands wrapped around his legs, his waist, his arms. The black veins on his skin pulsed violently, as if responding to the touch. He was being dragged backward, down the hallway, toward the open mouth of room 404. No, stop. Let go. The shadow Ethan stood in front of the doorway, its faceless surface forming something like a grotesque smile. We're going home. The hands lifted Ethan off the ground, carrying him horizontally toward the room. The air inside 404 churned like a living storm, black tendrils swirling in a vortex that pulled the world inward. Ethan screamed as he was flung forward, straight into the darkness. As it swallowed him whole, he heard one final whisper. The room is not a place. It's a memory that won't die. Ethan hit the ground hard, rolling over rough, cold concrete. The impact knocked the air out of his lungs, leaving him gasping in darkness so thick it felt like breathing ink. For a moment, everything was silent. No heartbeat, no whispers, no warped echoes of his own voice. Just darkness. Absolute. Suffocating. He pushed himself up slowly, palms sliding across gritty dust. The air tasted metallic, vibrating faintly with every shallow breath he took. As his eyes adjusted, he realized he was no longer inside the hotel hallway or the forest or the hospital. He was somewhere deeper, somewhere underneath everything else. A place the room had never shown him before. A single, faint light flickered overhead, a bare bulb dangling from a frayed wire. Its weak glow revealed a long, narrow corridor stretching endlessly into the dark. Its walls made of cracked cement stained with dark streaks. A basement, but not just any basement. The basement of room 404. Ethan shivered violently. No, this place shouldn't even exist. He took a step forward, and the moment his shoe touched the ground, a wave of cold rippled up his spine. The walls pulsed. The stains moved slowly, as if breathing. He wasn't alone down here. A soft scraping sound echoed behind him. Ethan spun so fast he nearly slipped. Nothing. Then another scrape. Closer. He backed away, heart pounding painfully in his chest. Show yourself. The bulb overhead flickered, buzzing in distress. As the light stuttered, Ethan saw the walls shift. Not physically, visually. Images began to appear in the cracks, faint, ghost-like scenes fading in and out. He stepped stepped closer, breath trembling. The wall showed a version of himself entering room 404 for the first time. Then another version fighting the shadow creature. Then another falling through the flesh cavern. Then another trapped in the hospital bed. Dozens of versions. Hundreds. All Ethan. Each suffering a different fate. Each dying in a different way. Each ending in 404. He stumbled back in horror. They're all me, a voice whispered from behind his shoulder. They were. Ethan turned and froze. A version of himself stood inches away, eyes sunken, skin graying like mold spreading across rotting fruit. His neck hung at a slightly unnatural angle, as if broken. This Ethan spoke with a dry, cracking voice. We all came here thinking we could escape. Another Ethan appeared behind him, and another, and another. Their bodies twisted, starved, half transformed, eyes hollow like burned out bulbs. Some dragged limbs that were too long. Some had shadows glued to their feet as if stitched. Others flickered, fading in and out like broken holograms. The room's previous victims weren't strangers. They were all versions of him. Different choices, different paths, different horrors, but the same ending. Ethan stumbled backward into the wall. No. I'm not like you. I'm still alive. I got farther. The broken neck Ethan leaned closer. Farther only means deeper. The corridor trembled. The bulb above exploded, plunging the hallway into momentary darkness. Then emergency lights flickered on, stretching the shadows longer, wider. A siren wailed in the distance, growing louder, mixing with a deep rumble beneath the floor. Dust rained from the ceiling. Cracks tore across the cement. Something massive was waking up below them. A creature, Ethan in the back whispered. It knows you're here. The floor split, a long crack racing down the corridor toward Ethan like a tearing mouth. A gush of cold air poured out. Then a black tendril. Then another. Ethan turned and ran. The corridor stretched longer with every step, twisting like intestines. The walls closed in behind him, just as the tendrils lashed, missing him by inches. His foot caught on something. He tripped and fell, scraping his palms raw. He turned. The tendrils were dragging the other Ethans back into the crack, one by one. Broken neck Ethan, starved Ethan, shadow-fused Ethan. Their screams overlapped in a sickening chorus. But when they reached the last one, a limping, trembling Ethan who looked almost identical to him, the tendrils paused. Then they withdrew, as if saving that one. Ethan scrambled backward in terror, eyes wide. Why didn't it take you? The last Ethan lifted his head slowly, tears streaming down his face. Because I'm the one who let it out. Ethan's blood froze. You. What does that mean? The duplicate. Ethan stepped closer, uneven, trembling, guilt carved into every feature. When I escaped the room, I didn't really escape. He placed a hand on his chest. I carried a piece of it with me. Ethan looked at his own hand where the black handprint had spread. The other Ethan nodded sadly. And now you carry it too. The corridor trembled violently. Concrete fell in slabs. The floor buckled. A roar deep, monstrous shook the entire underground. The tendrils rose again, but this time They weren't reaching for the other Ethan. They were reaching for Ethan himself. The ground beneath him split open, and a vast eye stared up at him from the darkness below. The same eye from the flesh cavern, watching, waiting, claiming. Ethan screamed as the floor gave way and the world dropped into darkness once more. Ethan plummeted through the collapsing floor, swallowed once again by darkness that seemed thicker and heavier than before. But this time the fall did not feel infinite. It felt intentional, as if the void wasn't simply letting him drop it, was carrying him somewhere deeper, somewhere final. Cold air rushed past him in violent waves, until he suddenly struck something soft and wet. He sank into it like a body landing on raw flesh. The impact forced the air from his lungs. A thick, warm film smeared across his arms as he pushed himself upright, gagging. He wasn't in a corridor anymore. He was in a throat, a massive biological tunnel, walls pulsing rhythmically, squeezing in waves that rippled towards some unseen destination. Veins glowed faintly beneath the membrane, and each pulse of blood-lit tissue cast the tunnel in sickening red light. A vibration traveled through the flesh, a slow, heavy heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. The creature was not beneath the hotel. The hotel was inside the creature. Ethan scrambled to his feet, slipping on the wet surface. The entire tunnel convulsed once, forcing him forward like a swallowed object being dragged deeper. No, no, stop! His voice echoed grotesquely, warped by the living walls, as if dozens of distorted versions of him were screaming back. He dug his fingers into the membrane, trying to pull himself backward, but the flesh was slick and pulsating, impossible to grip. A shadow moved ahead. No many shadows. Dozens, silhouettes crawling on all fours, figures with broken limbs, human-shaped things, dragging themselves through the creature's throat like insects in a feeding tube. As Ethan's eyes adjusted, he realized with sick horror they were all versions of himself, twisted, malformed, deformed by whatever the room had turned them into. Some had extra limbs, some had no faces, some had hollow chests, some were entirely made of shadow, all moving forward, deeper into the creature because they had no choice. One of them, half melted and barely recognizable, turned its head toward him. Its jaw hung loosely from rotted muscle, lips torn. Its voice was a strangled whisper. We tried to escape. Another Ethan, missing an entire side of his face, dragged himself closer, fingers bending backward like broken twigs. But you made it angry. Ethan stumbled backward as more versions crawled toward him, their voices forming a grotesque choir. You woke it up. You brought it back. You opened the door, and now it wants the one who got closest. Ethan shook his head violently. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything. A version of him tall, skeletal, body stretched unnaturally thin, laughed. A hollow, clicking sound. You escaped the longest. That's why it follows you. It wants you back. The tunnel convulsed again, violently, knocking Ethan to his knees. A roar echoed through the chamber, a sound so deep it felt like the world itself shuddered. The roar of the creature behind room 404. The tunnel began to tilt downward. Gravity shifted. The creature was swallowing. The malformed Ethan slid forward screaming, sucked into the abyss ahead. Ethan clawed at the flesh, but his hands slipped. The membrane tore under his nails, spilling warm fluid over him. He slid faster, falling, being consumed. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a massive chamber, a stomach-like cavern lined with writhing tendrils and clusters of pulsating teeth. In the center of the chamber, suspended by ropes of flesh, hung a beating organ, not a heart. A door, room 404's door, embedded into the creature like an artificial valve. Light flickered behind it. Voices whispered through the seams. "Come back. Come home. We're waiting." The chamber darkened, then lit, then darkened again. A shape formed behind the door. A silhouette. Tall, familiar, wrong. The shadow of Ethan himself. It pressed a hand against the door. Black veins spread from its touch. The entire organ door pulsed. Ethan's brand on his palm burned violently, glowing like coal. He screamed, clutching his wrist as the veins spread further up his arm. The shadow behind the 404 door tilted its head slowly, identical to him, before whispering, "You're the last piece." The flesh tunnel convulsed one final time. Ethan shot forward, helpless, toward the organ, toward the door, toward himself. And right before he hit the door, he saw his duplicate smile through the crack. "Welcome back." The world exploded into darkness. Ethan slammed into the door. It wasn't wood. It wasn't even solid. It was alive. The moment his body hit it, the organ door flexed, bending inward like stretched skin. A shockwave of heat rippled across its surface, and the black veins pulsing inside it flared bright red. Ethan bounced off and collapsed onto the wet, trembling flesh beneath him. The chamber rumbled, a guttural roar vibrating up the walls. The creature was fully awake now. Ethan groaned and lifted his head. The door room 404's impossible, beating door throbbed like a heart under pressure. Behind it, the silhouette of his shadow self paced slowly, its movements smooth and predatory. The voices whispered again, overlapping like layers of decaying tape. "Come back. You belong. We've been waiting." Ethan staggered to his feet, wiping the warm slime from his face. His legs trembled, barely holding him upright. "I'm not going through that door," he whispered. "Not again. Not ever." The shadow behind the door stopped pacing. It turned, facing him directly. A long, impossibly thin hand pressed against the living surface of the door. The door's veins bulged in response, glowing brighter like it was excited. The shadow Ethan tilted its head and spoke. "Not through the door, not through the chamber." The voice came from inside Ethan's own skull. "But you already did." Suddenly, Ethan felt something tugging at him inside him. A violent pull, sharp, invisible. He screamed as his arm jerked forward against his will. The black veins beneath his skin writhed like worms, racing toward his shoulder. His muscles spasmed, twisting him toward the door. No, get out of me." He fell to one knee, clutching his burning arm. The brand on his palm glowed brighter and brighter until light split the skin skin, revealing something pulsing beneath something dark. Wriggling, something trying to come out. Ethan cried out in agony. Behind the door, the shadow raised its hand again, mirroring Ethan's movement perfectly. The organ door swelled forward, as if responding to the tether between them. A fleshy tendril burst from the ground beside Ethan, wrapping around his ankle. Another shot up from behind and coiled around his wrist, yanking him backward. He fought, thrashing wildly, but more tendrils erupted around him like hungry vines. The chamber roared. The door opened, not slowly, not gently. It peeled. Layers of living tissue split apart like petals of a grotesque flower, revealing darkness inside darkness that rippled like liquid shadow. The silhouette inside stepped forward. Ethan's stomach lurched. The figure emerging from the door wasn't just his shadow self. It was becoming him, skin stretched over its face, forming familiar features. Ethan's own jawline, Ethan's nose, Ethan's hair shifting into place like clay, molding itself into a sculpture. But its eyes remained wrong white, hollow, hungry. Ethan shook his head violently. No, don't. Stop! The tendrils dragged him closer. The other. Ethan stepped fully out of the door, perfectly complete now. A mirror, a parasite. It stood inches away from him. Ethan stared into its hollow eyes and whispered, "Why me?" The creature leaned in, placing a cold hand against Ethan's cheek. Its skin felt like polished bone. "Because you were the first one to fight." Its mouth stretched into a smile too wide, cracking at the corners. "And the room wants what fight?" The tendrils hoisted Ethan upward, suspending him in front of the living door. The other. Ethan mirrored his position, raising its arms as if preparing to merge with him. A deep roar burst through the chamber so loud, Ethan felt it in his teeth. The door's interior churned, swirling shadows forming a vortex that pulled Ethan inward. His body twisted painfully as the force grew stronger, threatening to tear him apart molecule by molecule. "No, no, no!" The other. Ethan grabbed his face with both hands and forced Ethan's forehead toward the door. Warm, wet pressure swallowed him. His vision exploded into static. His thoughts scattered. His identity flickered. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. He couldn't tell where he ended and the room began. Voices flooded his head, not whispers anymore. Screams. Thousands of Ethans screaming in unison. His bones rattled. His chest burned. The black veins surged across his skin like ink flowing backward into his body. And in the midst of all the terror, one final voice whispered quietly, almost comfortingly, "We've always been inside the room." The darkness folded over him like a tidal wave. Everything went silent, and Ethan vanished. There was no light at first, no sound, no body, no Ethan, only a drifting, infinite darkness, thick and warm, like the inside of something breathing, a place without shape, a place without time, a place that felt like a womb. Ethan floated in that void, unable to tell if he was trapped for a second or a century. blurry. His thoughts came in fragments, echoing through the emptiness like pieces of broken glass. Who am I? Where is my voice? Why can't I feel my hands? Why can't I feel anything? Then the darkness around him rippled. A low thump pulsed through the void. A heartbeat, not his, the creature's. And Ethan realized he hadn't been consumed. He hadn't been killed. He had been absorbed. He was inside the mind of the thing behind room 404. His vision flickered. Images bled in like old film, grainy, distorted. A hotel corridor, a doorknob shaking violently, a silhouette pressing its face against a peephole from the other side. Another flash, a group of construction workers discovering something buried beneath the hotel foundation in 74. Their faces turned pale as tendrils burst from the earth, consuming them whole. Another flash, guests entering room 404 over decades, black veins appearing on their skin, mirrors cracking when they spoke, shadows detaching from their bodies, each one disappearing after screaming into the walls. Ethan watched dozens, hundreds of victims fade into the room, their memories stored like preserved insects. Then the worst flash, a child, barely 10 years old, curled up in a corner of a burned house. Ethan recognized the child instantly. Himself, and room 404 watched him even then, like it had chosen him long before he ever stepped through the hotel's doors. Ethan's mind trembled. No, that's impossible. I wasn't anywhere near this place when I was a kid. A voice formed inside the void, smooth, cold, enormous. I found you the moment you learned fear. The darkness lit up with a pulsating glow. A gigantic shape stirred in the distance. A shape with too many limbs, too many ribs, too many eyes that blinked in random places along its writhing form. Ethan floated helplessly toward it. The creature's voice filled the entire void. Fear is a door. A pause. And you opened yours very early. The memory shifted again. Ethan saw himself. Childhood him hiding under his bed while the burned house creaked around him. A nightmare he never escaped. A nightmare that wasn't supposed to follow him into adulthood. But room 404 had found him, followed him, studied him, fed on him. Every fear he carried. The room grew stronger. Ethan tried to scream, but he had no mouth. Why me? The darkness vibrated with something like amusement. Because you remember fear better than the others. Because you return to it willingly. Because your mind breaks beautifully. The creature extended a limb. It wrapped around Ethan's drifting consciousness slowly. Tenderly, you taste like survival. Ethan felt himself being pulled closer into the creature's shifting rib cage. Beneath him, an ocean of black fluid churned, each ripple containing a face screaming silently from beneath the surface. All versions of him, all the other Ethans that the room had consumed. Suddenly, a spark of pain jolted through his mind. A memory, sharp, bright, a doorknob, warm floorboards, the smell of hotel carpet, and a single thought. I'm still alive. The darkness recoiled slightly. The creature's enormous body shifted. Ethan felt something inside himself glow, a tiny shard of individuality the room hadn't devoured yet. The creature growled, "Let go. You cannot keep your shape here." Ethan fought to form a thought, something solid, something that belonged to him. "I'm Ethan Walker. I'm real. I exist outside this room." The void shook violently. The creature snarled, dozens of voices speaking over each other. "You belong to me." But the shard of thought grew brighter, expanding like a flare inside the darkness. Light, warm, blinding light. The creature's limb loosened. The void cracked, splitting into fractures of white and red, and Ethan fell out of the creature's mind, out of the void, back into somewhere. His body slammed onto solid ground. He gasped violently as air returned to his lungs in a painful surge. His eyes snapped open, and he found himself lying on the wooden floor of room 404 again, except the room was burning. Flames crawled along the carpet. The mirror's surface boiled. The shadows inside the room screamed like dying animals, and the other Ethan stood in the corner, watching him, burning, melting, smiling. "Welcome back. Almost home now." The fire in room 404 didn't behave like fire. It moved intentionally slow, crawling flames, slithering across the walls like living serpents. The burning carpet twisted in spirals, curling upward like fingers made of smoke. The air shimmered with heat, yet the room felt cold, bone-deep cold, the kind that gnaws at marrow. Ethan staggered to his feet, coughing violently. Sweat dripped from his forehead, but it wasn't from heat. It was terror. His lungs screamed for air, but each breath tasted like ash and wet stone. The melting duplicate in the corner tilted its head, strings of liquefied skin sliding from its jaw. "You're almost finished," it said, voice gurgling through half-formed vocal cords. "Almost ready." Ethan stumbled backward until he hit the wall. "Ready for what? What do you want from me?" The duplicate's arms stretched, bones cracking like snapping branches as it pointed toward the mirror, hanging crookedly on the wall, its surface warping like boiling metal. Ethan swallowed hard. "No, I'm not going near that." The duplicate smiled wider. Its teeth dripped like wax. "You don't have a choice." The floor beneath Ethan groaned. A deep, resonating sound. A heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. The walls swelled outward, bulging in time with the pulse like the entire room was breathing, waking, hungering. Ethan ran to the door and grabbed the handle. It burned him. He screamed and fell back, clutching his blistering palm. The door was gone. In its place was smooth, fleshy wall, veins pulsing beneath the surface. The room was closing. No. A violent tremor threw him to the ground. The flames extinguished instantly, snuffed out like candles. The temperature dropped so fast, frost formed along the charred edges of the carpet. The entire room grew still, dead still. Then the mirror lit up. A pale glow shimmered across its melting surface, revealing something on the other side. not Ethan's reflection. A room, a hospital room, a version of Ethan strapped to a bed, eyes open and screaming soundlessly. Another scene flickered. A burned house collapsing on a child. Then another, a forest swallowing a running man whole. Then dozens more endless, every alternate Ethan dying in a different nightmare. The mirror convulsed, and something began pushing against the glass from inside. Ethan's breath stopped. A hand, thin, gray, drenched in shadow, pressed outward, its fingers bent backward, scraping lines across the melting surface. Another hand appeared beside it, then a long, stretched face pushed forward, pressing against the glass so hard the mirror bulged outward like a membrane. The duplicate behind Ethan whispered, "That's the real one." The mirror cracked. A scream tore through the room, high-pitched, overlapping. Dozens of human voices mixed into one inhuman shriek. The creature inside the glass burst free. It hit the floor like a puddle of living shadow, limbs flattening and reforming as it lifted itself up in jerky, unnatural movements. Its head cracked sideways, white eyes glowing through dripping darkness. Ethan crawled backward in terror. No! The creature lunged. Ethan rolled aside just as its arm slammed into the ground, the impact cracking the wooden floor and sending splinters flying. He scrambled toward the bed, the only thing he could use as a barrier, but the creature flowed across the ground like liquid, sliding around the bed faster than he could move. It rose directly in front of him, tall, thin, familiar. Ethan's own silhouette distorted, shadow-fused, stripped of everything human. It raised a trembling finger and pointed at Ethan's chest. The black veins on Ethan's skin ignited with pain. He screamed as his arm seized, muscles tightening like wires pulled taut. The creature's fingers twitched, controlling his body like a puppet. Stop, let me go. The creature stepped closer, leaning in until its blank, shifting face was inches from Ethan's. When it spoke, it used Ethan's own voice. "This body was never yours." Pain exploded up Ethan's spine as the veins surged, crawling across his shoulder, neck, and face. His vision blurred, his thoughts fragmented, his heartbeat slowed, matching the monstrous pulse of the room. He collapsed to his knees. The shadow creature crouched with him, placing a cold hand on the back of Ethan's skull. The touch sank into him like a needle of ice. Ethan screamed, his voice warped, his body twisted. The duplicate in the corner watched with melting satisfaction. "Become what you were meant to be." The room lurched violently. The mirror shattered inward. The bed collapsed. The ceiling bent downward like a closing throat, and Ethan felt his mind slipping, identity dissolving, fear erasing everything, until one tiny spark remained. A memory. His mother's voice. Warm, human. "Ethan, breathe." Just one breath. He inhaled. Light sparked inside his mind. The creature recoiled, hissing as if burned. The veins halted, and Ethan's eyes snapped open bright, sharp, alive. The shadow creature froze. Ethan whispered. "I'm not done yet." The room screamed. The room reacted instantly to Ethan's awakening spark. A violent shudder rolled through the walls, rattling the bed frame and sending cracks racing across the ceiling like lightning scars. The shadow creature reeled back, its skin rippling as though something hot had seared it. Ethan gasped, struggling to stay conscious. His limbs shook, his lungs burned, but the thin thread of clarity inside him held strong. The creature hissed in rage, its voice splitting into multiple overlapping tones. "You do not breathe in here." But Ethan did. A full, deliberate inhale, defiant, human, and the room screamed. A deep, biological roar surged from beneath the floorboards. The carpet tore open, exposing pulsing tissue beneath. Veins bulged outward, writhing like angry worms. Tendrils shot upward from the fleshy underlayer, lashing at Ethan with violent, frantic precision. He rolled aside, barely avoiding a tendril that smashed into the floor where he had been. The impact sent splinters flying. Ethan scrambled toward the far wall. He didn't know why. He just felt something pulling him forward. Not the room, not the creature. Something in him. As he moved, the shadow creature lunged, its limbs elongated, stretching unnaturally like shadow rubber. Its fingers hooked into claws, dragging gouges into the walls as it propelled itself toward him. Ethan grabbed a broken bedpost, its end jagged like a spear. The creature struck. Ethan swung. The wood pierced the shadow's torso. Instead of blood, black mist exploded from the wound, swirling violently like smoke fighting to maintain shape. The creature shrieked, its body fracturing into jagged, glitching fragments. Ethan stumbled back, shocked. The creature reformed, but weaker. Its limbs trembled, its glowing eyes flickered. He tightened his grip on the bedpost. "I can hurt you." The creature tilted its head, then smiled, the skin stretching too far. "Only because you still think you're separate." The walls pulsed violently. The melting duplicate across the room raised its liquefied hand, pointing at Ethan with a shaking finger. He still believes he is one. He still believes he has a shape. Ethan backed away. "What are you talking about?" All three voices, the shadow creature, the melting duplicate, and the room itself, answered in horrifying unison. "You are us." The floor buckled. A deep fissure tore across the center of the room, splitting the carpet apart to reveal a massive, beating heart embedded beneath the floor. Its surface pulsed with thick black veins, identical to the ones crawling under Ethan's skin. The heart thumped hard. Ethan dropped to one knee as a wave of energy surged through him, the veins under his flesh glowing like molten metal. His bones vibrated, his thoughts scattered, his vision fractured into a kaleidoscope of memories. His memories, the other Ethan's memories, the creature's memories, all bleeding together into one impossible consciousness. No, stop. The heart pulsed again. His fingers bent involuntarily. His jaw clenched against his will. His shadow stretched across the floor, rising like a second body, the same silhouette from the forest, the hospital, the hallway, the same shape he thought he'd escaped. The shadow stepped out of him, separating cleanly, smoothly, as if it had always been there waiting. Ethan stared at it in horror. What are you?" The shadow raised a hand, Ethan's hand, and placed it gently against Ethan's chest. Cold, icy, familiar. We are your fear, and your fear is infinite. The melting duplicate slithered closer, dripping over the floor like wax. Let go, Ethan. You fought longer than any of us, but that only made the bond stronger. The room's walls writhed. The entire structure shook like a creature in pain. The beating heart beneath the floor split open. A fleshy cavity yawned beneath Ethan's feet. Hot air rising, tendrils writhing, teeth unfurling like petals. The room was opening its true mouth. You are ready. The shadow placed both hands on Ethan's shoulders. A tendril shot upward from the cavity beneath him, wrapping around his leg, then another around his waist, another around his wrist. Ethan screamed and tried to wrench free, but the tendrils tightened, pulling him down. His shoes scraped helplessly against the wooden floor as he was dragged toward the living pit. No, let me go. The melting duplicate leaned close to his ear. One breath wasn't enough to save you, the shadow whispered from the other side. You have to choose. Ethan blinked through tears. Choose what? The room answered in a deafening chorus. The voices of thousands of Ethans echoing through the collapsing space. Choose who you are. Or we will choose for you. The tendrils tightened. The floor split. Ethan was dragged into the mouth of room 404's true body as the shadow version of him watched, waiting. Ethan was dragged downward so violently that his spine felt like it might snap. The tendrils wrapped around him tightened with a sickening rhythm, pulsing like serpents constricting their prey. His fingernails clawed desperately at the floorboards, leaving bloody streaks as he tried to hold on, but the wood softened beneath his grip. It wasn't wood anymore. It was flesh, warm, alive, hungry. The giant cavity beneath him yawned wider, teeth unfurling like petals of a carnivorous flower. Tendrils slithered across the edges, dripping with viscous black fluid that hissed like acid when it touched the air. Ethan screamed, twisting his body in a frantic attempt to break free. I'm not part of you. I'm not. The shadow version of himself knelt calmly beside the pit, hands folded behind its back like a patient observer. Its hollow white eyes gleamed with cold amusement. You were part of us the moment you stepped through the door. The melting duplicate slithered onto the floor near Ethan's head. Its voice bubbled through liquefied flesh. Stop struggling. You'll tear. The room roared, a deep, cavernous sound that shook the walls and sent ripples through the flesh beneath Ethan's body. Thump, thump, thump. The heartbeat. The monster behind room 404 was ready. Ethan felt the pull intensify, tendrils around his waist wrenching him violently toward the maw. Pain exploded through his body as bones strained, joints threatening to dislocate. He gasped through tears. I don't want to die. The shadow. Ethan leaned closer, whispering gently, then stop being Ethan. Ethan blinked, chest heaving. What does that mean? The room responded in hundreds of overlapping whispers. Let go of yourself. Let go of fear. Let go of memory. Become what remains. tendrils started pulling again, slow, methodical, merciless. Ethan screamed until his voice cracked, the sound swallowed instantly by the room's flesh. One tendril wrapped around his face, sliding over his mouth, silencing him. Another coiled around his chest, tightening like a rib cage trying to crush him. Darkness crept into his vision. His heartbeat faltered. His thoughts dissolved, slipping into white noise. He was losing himself. Again, the shadow. Ethan spoke louder now, its voice layered with all the other Ethans who had been consumed before. If you do not choose who you are, you will become what we are. The maw beneath him growled, hot breath blasting up against his skin. Fleshy teeth scraped the tendrils like eager hands waiting to pull him apart. Ethan's mind began to crack, his sense of self flickering like a dying light. Fragments of memories flashed. His mother's warm laugh, his father's hand on his shoulder, sharing secrets with his best friend, watching storms through a foggy window, running down a summer street at age 9, cry-laughing at the stupidest joke he'd ever heard, fearing the dark for the first time, fearing everything after. His entire life, his entire identity, flickered, then collapsed. The shadow. Ethan tilted its head. Now do you understand? Ethan choked out a whisper. I don't want to disappear. The room went silent. Every tendril froze. Every vein stopped pulsing. The heartbeat paused mid-beat. Silence. The shadow. Ethan crouched lower, placing a cold hand on Ethan's cheek. Then you must decide what part of you is worth keeping. The melting duplicate leaned in close, its face dripping like wax. Choose quickly. The silence shattered as the heartbeat returned with earth-shaking force. Thump! The tendrils yanked harder. Thump! Ethan screamed, the sound drowned beneath the monstrous pulse rising from below. Thump! The maw opened wider, darkness swirling like a vortex. He felt himself slipping, mind first, body next, identity last, and then a spark, small, warm, human. He felt it inside his chest, a heartbeat. His own, separate, distinct, alive, and for the first time, he recognized it. I choose me. The ripple of his voice burst outward like a shock wave. The tendrils recoiled, shrieking. The shadow. Ethan staggered back. The melting duplicate convulsed violently. The maw's teeth snapped shut in frustration. The entire room heaved, as if the creature inside it had just been wounded. Ethan gasped, air returning to his lungs as the tendrils loosened slightly. The heartbeat beneath him faltered. He wasn't free, not yet, but for the first time, Room 404 reacted in fear. Room 404 shuddered so violently that Ethan felt the entire structure twist beneath him, as if the creature inside the walls had recoiled in pain. The tendrils wrapped around his limbs loosened just enough for him to gasp and wrench one arm free. His chest burned with the aftershock of his own voice. The human heartbeat he had reclaimed. His heartbeat echoed again. Not the creature's, not the room's. His. The effect was immediate. The fleshy maw beneath him snapped shut. Furious, the walls trembled, bulging inward, veins pulsing like frantic serpents. The shadow. Ethan staggered backward, its form flickering like a corrupted reflection struggling to stay stable. The melting duplicate let out a guttural groan, its liquefied body convulsing as if boiling from the inside. Ethan felt a surge of clarity, not courage, not strength, but identity, something the room had not been able to digest. "I'm not your puppet," he whispered through gritted teeth. "Not anymore." The shadow. Ethan rose slowly, trembling, eyes glowing dim like dying embers. Identity means nothing here. Its voice warped, stuttering. "We will take it." Again, it lunged, but this time Ethan didn't freeze. He braced his foot against a cracked floorboard and swung the broken bedpost with every ounce of defiance in his body. The jagged wood slammed into the creature's head, but instead of simply recoiling, the shadow's form shattered like glass hit with a hammer. Its pieces scattered across the room, dissolving into black mist. The room roared, furious. Tendrils shot upward from the flesh beneath him, faster, more violent, like a storm of living whips. Ethan leapt onto the bed, the mattress collapsing halfway through the frame. He staggered but kept moving, grabbing for anything he could use: the lamp, the nightstand drawer, even a shard of the broken mirror. Every vein under his skin pulsed, every thought sharpened, every instinct screamed. The room wanted him dead. The creature wanted him consumed. But he wasn't going to die here. He wasn't going to become another version lost in the walls. A tendril slashed toward him. He dodged left, then right, then vaulted over the collapsing bed frame as another tendril shattered the lamp beside him. His breath heaved. His body bled, his mind burned, but he was alive, more alive than he'd ever been. The melting duplicate crawled toward him, its voice trembling like broken glass. "You can't win. It is you. You are it." Ethan felt something snap inside him. "No," he growled. "I am not it." He grabbed the shard of mirror, its edges glinting with faint silver light, and without hesitation, he drove it into the melting duplicate's chest. The creature let out a shrill, bubbling scream as black fluid erupted from the wound. Its body dissolved rapidly, dripping into the cracks of the floor like molten tar. The shadow Ethan reformed near the doorway, weakened but still standing. Its limbs twitched, its chest pulsed in sync with the room's monstrous heartbeat. Ethan stared it down. "It doesn't matter how many versions you make," he said, voice raw. "The real me is still right here." His heartbeat thundered again. Boom! The room lurched. Boom! Lights overhead exploded. Boom! The tendrils recoiled, trembling violently. Something massive shifted beneath the room, the creature at the hotel's core, writhing, injured, furious. Cracks spread across the floor like a spider web splitting open. Ethan's shadow, the one that had haunted him through every nightmare, rose fully from the ground, its shape distorted, growing taller, limbs elongating unnaturally as it hovered above the forming cracks. It stared down at him. "You think a heartbeat can save you?" Its voice was an echo of an echo. "You are already ours." Ethan held his chest. He felt the heartbeat again, but this time it spread. A wave of warmth radiated outward from his core, traveling through every limb, every nerve, every thought. His vision sharpened, his skin glowed faintly. He wasn't just feeling his heartbeat. He was projecting it. The room reacted violently. The walls contorted. The floor split wide open. The entire space screamed like a creature whose nerves had been severed. Ethan stepped forward. One step, another. The shadow. Ethan shriveled, its height collapsing, its limbs retracting as if crushed by invisible force. "Stop!" it begged, voice cracking, but Ethan didn't stop. He planted his foot firmly on the cracking floor. His heartbeat thundered one final time. Boom! The entire room buckled inward. The maw beneath Ethan sealed shut with a violent spasm. Tendrils crumbled into dust. The shadow creature imploded, dissolving into a cloud of black smoke that was sucked into the cracks of the floor. For one brief moment, room 404 fell silent, truly silent. Ethan gasped for breath, exhausted, battered, shaking, but still himself, still Ethan. But then, the silence shifted. The atmosphere grew colder. The floor beneath him trembled, and a deep voice, the true voice of the creature, spoke from everywhere at once. "You have chosen yourself. Now face what you truly are." The floor collapsed beneath him. Ethan fell into blinding light, into the unknown, into the final truth of room 404. Ethan plummeted through the collapsing floor, but this time there was no flesh, no tendrils, no darkness. There was only light blinding, white, endless. For a moment he felt weightless. Then he slammed onto cold pavement. His body rolled across rough concrete until he collided with a metal trash can. The clang echoed sharply in the quiet air. Ethan groaned, pushing himself up on trembling arms. His breath caught. He was outside, a city street, empty, quiet, nighttime. The neon sign of the old Harrington Hotel flickered several meters away. He was back at the real hotel, in the real world. Ethan's heart pounded wildly, but this time out of relief, pure, desperate relief. He stumbled to his feet, gripping a lamppost to stay steady. Cars passed at the distance. A cold wind brushed his skin. A dog barked somewhere far down the street. Normal sounds, normal world, normal life. Tears filled his eyes. I made it, he whispered. The hotel lights flickered. All of them. Every window, every bulb, every sign. The entire building seemed to shudder, as if taking a deep breath. Ethan stepped back, terror climbing his spine again. No, stay away from me. I'm done with you. I chose myself. You can't have me anymore. The hotel didn't answer, but the world did. The street lights buzzed loudly. The pavement beneath his feet vibrated. The shadows of passing cars stretched impossibly long, reaching toward him, bending in unnatural ways. Ethan stumbled backward in panic. Then he noticed something. His own shadow wasn't behind him. It was in front of him, standing upright, like a person, a tall, thin silhouette rising from the pavement, pulling itself free from his feet as if detaching a mask. Its head tilted slowly, just like the shadow version of him inside the room. Ethan froze. No! The shadow stepped forward, Then another step, its shape solidified pitch black, vibrating, the outline of a man made of absence. Its eyes open, two hollow white voids staring back at Ethan. A voice whispered behind him, "You chose yourself." Ethan spun around. A second shadow emerged from the alleyway, then a third from the side of a parked car, then dozens more from every building surface, peeling off walls and floors like reflections breaking free. Every shadow knew him. Every shadow mirrored him. Every shadow belonged to the room. The whispers layered into a suffocating chorus. "You chose yourself. And so now we choose you." The shadows advanced. Circling him, Ethan backed away until he hit the side of a dumpster. His heartbeat hammered in his chest, but it wasn't enough. The world around him flickered, glitching like corrupted video frames. A dark wave rolled across the sky as if night itself was bending. The tallest shadow stepped closer, inches from Ethan's face. Its voice was colder and clearer than all the others. "The room does not end at the door. It ends with you." Ethan shook violently, gripping the dumpster edge. "What do you want from me? I did everything I fought you. I chose myself. Why won't you stop?" For a moment, everything fell silent. Even the wind held its breath. Then the shadow's face, blank and smooth, stretched into a mouthless smile. "Because you survived." The words pierced Ethan deeper than any tendril ever could. A sudden force seized his chest, knocking the air from his lungs. His back arched involuntarily as a burning sensation surged through him. The black veins under his skin flaring like wildfire. No, not again. His vision blurred. The street melted. The buildings twisted. The sky cracked like shattered glass. Reality itself bent around him, collapsing inward. The shadows all whispered the same final sentence, synchronized, calm, inevitable. "Welcome home, Ethan." The world folded like paper. Light vanished, and room 404 closed around him once more. But this time, it wasn't trying to consume him. It was waiting for him to become what he truly was. For the first time, Ethan didn't scream. He exhaled slowly, and the room exhaled with him. Darkness embraced him like a second skin, not killing him, not trapping him, but accepting him, becoming Ethan Walker, becoming the next door, the next nightmare.